So it's been 9 years since Rockstar released GTA 5, and since then, fans have been patiently, or not so patiently, waiting for details on GTA 6. Finally, some have leaked, but they're very concerning in my opinion, and it's sparking concerns over whether the game will be woke. This is an article from Bloomberg by Jason Schreier, and it's titled Rockstar Games Cleaned Up Its Frat Boy Culture and Grand Theft Auto 2. With the new tone at the company and a change in creative direction, GTA 6 will probably feel very different from its predecessor. Now we're going to get into this article, but first I want to highlight this tweet from Nibel. He highlights a few things about what's going on in GTA 6, and he says, some more Grand Theft Auto 6 details. Working title is Project Americas, which I think we've known for a while now. Main location is a fictional version of Miami plus surrounding areas. Game will evolve over time, adding new cities. And the game world is already large, more interior locations than previous GTA games. Now this third one here, game will evolve over time, adding new cities, concerns me. Because the way it's worded sounds kind of like it's a live service. And I just really hate the idea of GTA 6 being a live service. I don't think that's a good idea. That's kind of direction gaming is going in, sadly. I just don't like it. We're going to go down a bit in the article, and then we'll come back up to the beginning. But I just want to go down a little bit first. It says, sticking to that pledge, and it's talking about how they've said that they're not going to do excessive overtime. They're not going to overwork the employees like that as they were before, which isn't exactly a bad thing, but it seems like they're doing it too much. Like every industry has overtime. I mean, you just gotta deal with it sometimes. Yes, I think if what Dan Houser said was true, 100-hour work weeks sometimes towards the end, that is too excessive. I mean, you gotta deal with some crunch. It's just kind of need it in the game industry to get things done quick, or at least quick enough. You can't just take your sweet time on these games as much as you'd like to. You really can't. People are just going to get impatient, like they already are. It's been 9 years since GTA 5 released. You gotta pick up the pace. So that's what it's referring to. So sticking to that pledge has already prompted changes to the game. Original plans for the title, which is codenamed Project Americas, like we just talked about a couple minutes ago, were for it to be more vast than any Grand Theft Auto game to date. Early designs called for the inclusion of territories modeled after large swaths of North and South America, according to people familiar with the plans, but the company reeled in those ambitions and cut the main map down to a fictional version of Miami and its surrounding areas. So that would have been really cool to see. And it seems like these changes, and we'll get a little more into them later, it seems like these changes are kind of affecting the game and their ambitions. So that's already one cause for concern we're going to talk more about, and now we're going to talk about more causes for concern. But let's get into this article. Jason Schreier writes, in the summer of 2020, after a police officer killed George Floyd, Rockstar Games quietly shelved a mode of play it had a plan to release for its Grand Theft Auto online game. Now, this doesn't really relate to GTA 6, but I'm reading this part for a reason. So he continues, called Cops and Crooks, the mode was a twist on the children's game where players organized into teams of good guys and bad guys, but seemed especially tone-deaf during a global reckoning over police violence. Senior executives at the company, concerned about how the narrative might be interpreted during a time of heightened skepticism and mistrust of American police, put it aside. They still haven't made plans to bring it back, according to people familiar with development. This is just ridiculous. It's cops and robbers. And this game's been around for who knows how long. I mean, GTA is a game where you're a bad guy doing bad things, and the police try to stop you. It's literally GTA, but just a different game mode. So, I mean, it's just insane. If you're gonna go that route, might as well not make GTA. Absolutely ridiculous. And that this is just one of the things that show a cultural shift at Rockstar, and one of the reasons why it raises concerns. What they say later on in this article. This was one of several politically sensitive actions Rockstar, a division of Take-Two Interactive Software Inc., has taken in recent years. The company removed transphobic jokes from the most recent console release of Grand Theft Auto V, and they didn't mention it in here, but in the definitive trilogy they released earlier this year, they took out a shirt with the Confederate flag on it from one of the games in that trilogy and from one of the characters. Haven't played any of those. I've only played GTA 5, just for the record. So I don't know what character it was who wore it, but they took that out as well. And this censorship goes into something we'll get to later again. So the company removed transphobic jokes from the most recent console release, Grand Theft Auto V, and significantly narrowed its gender pay gap. AKA, they're overpaying a bunch of women who probably have lesser roles in the company and have been there less amount of time than most of the men that are being paid more and probably don't deserve the pay raise. If you've done 2 minutes research, you know the gender pay gap's bullshit. So, just get that out of the way. Rockstar's next game, Grand Theft Auto 6, will include a playable female protagonist for the first time, according to people familiar with the game. The woman, who is Latina, will be one of a pair of leading characters in a story influenced by the bank robbers Bonnie and Clyde, the people said. So I want to talk about this first. So there are a lot of people out there being either disingenuous or just not understanding the controversy, saying there are a lot of people upset about, oh, there's a female character in GTA, how dare they, blah blah blah. That's not the case. Sure, there might be a few people, but that's a very small minority of people that have that issue. I'm personally fine with it. I think the Bonnie and Clyde concept is very interesting, actually, and I'd be a huge hypocrite to say that there shouldn't be a female protagonist, because Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, and Sadie Adler is one of my favorite characters. And I've wanted, keyword wanted, for them to make a Red Dead game following her, or DLC at least, because she's badass. She's doesn't give a fuck. I mean, she's just a really cool character. She's not a Mary Sue. She has flaws. She's vulnerable, and she's reckless. She's not the best, certainly, and she needs to lean on Arthur and John for help as well. So I think she's a great character, and I've wanted them to make game around her, or DLC at least, like I said. So I'd be a huge hypocrite to say that they shouldn't do this. But at the same time, playing devil's advocate, I can see why people would be concerned about them having a female protagonist, because typically, even though I just said that about Sadie Adler, typically, just women are more sensitive. That's just a fact. Shouldn't be breaking any news to anybody. I mean, they just don't have the same sense of humor that men do. I mean, hashtag not all, but most, I'd say, are more sensitive and wouldn't be into the same jokes that they make in GTA. And that is a very valid concern, as we'll get into later, but I mean, there is a way to do it, like I said with Sadie Adler, but as we get further into this article, you realize why that's more of a concern. But again, I'm fine with them having a female protagonist as long as it's for the right reasons. As long as it isn't forced and it feels natural, I'm okay with it. There's a difference between naturally having a female protagonist and forcing it for agenda. And if they do it for the second reason, then it's not going to work out well. And there's valid reason for that concern that they might do that as we get further down in the article. But here's the second concern, right here actually. Developers are also being cautious not to, quote, punch down by making jokes about marginalized groups, the people said, in contrast to previous games. I mean, that's a big part of what makes GTA great. The jokes. They make fun of everybody. Make fun of Republicans, Democrats, women, men, every gender, race even. It's just ridiculous to say you don't want to punch down, make jokes about that. That's GTA. If you don't have those jokes, it's just not GTA. You can still make a game where it's less satirical, just don't call it GTA. That's all I'm saying here. But if you're just gonna take comedy out of GTA, it's not GTA. We're gonna get more into this as well. Moves like these once seemed unthinkable for a company whose best-selling franchise is a satirical depiction of America that involves playing gangsters who kill civilians, where women are mostly depicted as sex objects. Grand Theft Auto 5 was nihilistically parody that threw insults at everything, from right-wing radio hosts to liberal politicians. Like I just said, inside the company, the tone wasn't much different. Rockstar employees described a workplace culture full of drinking, brawling, and excursions to strip clubs. I mean, what's wrong with drinking and excursions to strip clubs on their off time? What's wrong with that? Brawling, maybe not the best, but drinking and excursions to strip clubs on their off time, especially when we're talking about crunch, just take a break. That isn't a bad thing. The company was an early symbol of industry-wide problem with long hours at the office known as crunch, in which staff were expected to be at their desks many nights and weekends in order to keep a game on schedule. This strategy was financially successful and turned Grand Theft Auto 5 into the second best-selling game of all time, with 165 million copies sold. It has also led to burnout, attrition, and public controversy in 2018, prompted hundreds of Rockstar employees to speak out about the difficult work environment. Since that outcry, Rockstar has attempted to reinvent itself as a more progressive and compassionate workplace. This is code work for woke workplace. So, bad sign there. According to interviews with more than 20 people who work there or left recently, all of whom requested anonymity because they weren't authorized to speak publicly. One employee described it as, quote, a boys' club transformed into a real company, end quote. A spokesman for Rockstar declined to comment. So you're abandoning the successful business model for a business model that's proven to fail. And not the best decision making there, huh? You know what's funny is these companies that are described as a boys' club are typically some of the most successful in gaming. Now, I say this as a Gen Zer myself. It's Gen Zers and millennials getting into this gaming industry that are taught that this is all toxic and they can't be talked down to. And then they complain about it and get all the people kicked out, get the workplace culture to change, and then the company starts failing. And I think in part is because there's more women getting into this industry, and especially there's some feminist women in there that just want to change everything, because it's been a boys' hobby for a long time, and more women have been getting into it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's been a lot of feminist women as well that just gone in and just tried to change everything. So I think a lot of it is that as well. And this happens with, like, every boys' hobby. Like, starts out as something just for boys that isn't as popular, then it gets more popular, women start getting into it, and then the feminists start changing everything, say, this is sexist, this is what racist, whatever, and change everything and just make it terrible. I think that might be what's happening here and what's been happening in the game industry. Nina Sarkeesian. Uh, I mean, you don't see guys going into women's hobbies and changing everything. Just guys can't have anything to themselves. And like I said, it's okay for more women to get into it, but then there's just every time there's feminist women that come in and just ruin it. That's the issue, not women in general getting into it. It's these feminist women. I think that's a huge part of this as well. But moving on, can a kinder, gentler Rockstar still produce the chart-topping caliber of game the studio has become known for? Spoiler alert, no. Some employees aren't sure. I'm sure that's true. Morale across the company is higher than it's ever been, according to many staffers, but the development of Grand Theft Auto 6 has been slower than impatient fans and even longtime employees have expected. Much of that has to do with the pandemic. It's been 9 years. It'll be 11 years at least since the game comes out. The pandemic started in 2020. What's been going on the other 7 years? Like, these companies use the pandemic as an excuse for everything. You're a gaming company. You're Rockstar. You have billions of dollars. You can do work from home in this time. You have the money to get these employees computers, good computers, to work on. I mean, sure it's gonna slow it down, but you can't just use that as an excuse for everything, especially this, since it had been in development 7 years prior. And that's ridiculous to say that that's a huge reason why. But the delay is also due to some of the changes that the company implemented in an effort to improve working conditions. No shit. Such as restructuring of the design department and a pledge to keep overtime under control. I mean, like I said, if you're just gonna get rid of overtime completely, or reduce it almost entirely, then it's gonna take forever and people are gonna get upset. And especially with this, people have very high expectations for GTA 6. And if it even disappoints them a little bit, they're going to be pissed. Some workers say they're still trying to figure out how to make games at this new iteration of Rockstar and wonder even what a Grand Theft Auto game looks like in today's environment. Oh my god, this is going to be fucking awful, isn't it? The more I read into this, the more concerned I get. I guess I shouldn't say it's going to be fucking awful, but it just seems like a complete disaster there. I just can't see how they make a great game after all these changes. Besides, several Rockstar employees have pointed out that you can't really satirize today's America. It's already a satire of itself. I mean, you're not wrong. It is. But at the same time, there's places like the Babylon Bee, a satire news site. They write articles, and lately they've been coming true. That's how much of a parody America has become, at least the political side. So it is harder. It definitely is a lot harder to satirize America today. But you just gotta work harder at it. Like, even if it's true, you can still make fun of it. You can still joke around about America. It's not that hard, especially since a lot of it's already written for you. Not hard at all. But moving on. Between the company's new mandate and the 2019 departure of Dan Houser, who led creative direction on many previous Rockstar games, all signs suggest Grand Theft Auto 6 will feel very different than its predecessor. And I totally agree with that after reading into this. But Dan Houser leaving was, I think, reading this, and I guess we'll see though. Haven't seen GTA 6 at all, so could be better than I'm thinking. But I think Dan Houser leaving was really the beginning of the downfall of Rockstar. I'm not saying they're gonna plummet or anything, but you had Red Dead Redemption 2 in 2018. It was fantastic. It's my favorite game of all time. And then Dan Houser left a year later, maybe not even a year later, shortly after, and things immediately started changing, it seems. So I think Dan Houser was really the glue that kept things together. And now he's left and he's made his own studio, and hopefully he makes good games over there. I have hope that he will, because he seems sane. considering the games he's made, but hopefully it doesn't go the same direction as seems like Rockstar may be going. I don't think it will, but who knows? But I just think Dan Houser leaving was beginning of the end for old Rockstar. There is one more thing that I kind of want to talk about and see if I can find it here. Yeah, here. Rockstar put in place a new management structure following the departure of former design director Imran Sarwar. If I'm saying that right, I have no clue. Who was accused by several employees of bullying and verbal abuse. Just seems like he was harsh. I mean, I don't know exactly what was happening, but by the sounds of that, often that means he was just harsh. So I have no clue, but seems kind of like bullshit to me. But again, I don't know. His position was filled by 3 other directors, creating what several people described as too many cooks situation, where design decisions are frequently left in flux or contradict one another. Some core aspects of the game, such as combat, were still going through changes, even as developers expected them to be locked down, employees said. Sarwar didn't respond to requests for comment. So this just adds more to what seems like a disaster at Rockstar. Why would they think hiring 3 other directors to replace one would be a good idea? Obviously, all of them have different opinions, different thoughts, different ideas. Why would you hire 3 different directors to replace one person? That just makes no sense to me. It just adds more disaster, and there's even more in here that really is concerning about what's going on at the company, what's going on in the development of this game. So if you want to learn more about that, just look up this article. But to me, all signs point to GTA 6 not looking good. But I don't know if GTA 6 will particularly be woke. But it's definitely not going to feel like GTA 6, I don't think. And it definitely looks like there's a lot of issues with development. It's very concerning. But I mean, we saw Saints Row and stuff they were saying about it, what they wanted to change. We saw what the game looks like, and that's a disaster, and that is something you can compare this to. If this game, after 11 years at the time of release, at least 2024 would be 11 years. That's at earliest we're expecting this game to come out. So it could be even longer. If after 11 years people have been eagerly awaiting this game, if it disappoints, it will be a disaster for them, and it will be the beginning of a downward spiral. I don't know how fast it'll be, but the game will initially sell well, of course, GTA 6, but like The Last of Us 2, it sold so far 50% less than Last of Us 1 did. Last of Us 1 sold around 20 million to just surpass 10 million like 2 years after release. And we saw Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red, how that went after people were let down by the final product. In that particular situation, it was CD Projekt Red lied about things they said were going to be in the game and weren't. And just the game was just broken. It was a mess. And CD Projekt Red has now lost all credibility. The next game they release probably won't sell nearly as well as their previous games. Witcher 3, Cyberpunk even sold well to start. Even with all the returns, still sold well to start. I don't know what the number is at now, but it's not going to be nearly as high as previous games, I bet. And they've lost all credibility at this point. So if Rockstar releases this game at least 11 years later and it disappoints, it's going to be a disaster for them. It's going to be very interesting to see in a couple years at least what happens and what's the reaction and what this game looks like. Maybe we see next year a first look at the game and what it looks like. But if it disappoints, that will be something to watch. But after CD Projekt Red, I mean, no company's too big to fail. even Disney is falling a bit. I mean, obviously they have the theme parks that are doing well, but on the entertainment side, Disney is losing money, and their stock has gone down a ton. I know a lot of companies' stock has gone down recently because the economy and everything, but theirs have gone down at a bigger margin than other companies. So no company's too big to fail. And there's also Bethesda with Fallout 76. That whole situation, they kind of lost credibility. They're not as popular, I'd say, as they were before. Obviously, they're still big, but they're they don't have nearly as much trust as they did before. So it'll be an interesting thing to see, and I guess we'll just have to wait. But let me know what you think about this. Are you excited about this still? Are you extremely concerned? Let me know. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more. Comment, share. Thanks for watching. I have another channel called The Thoughtful Outlaw Sports where I talk about basketball, baseball, football, and anything else sports related I'm interested in. So check that out if you're interested, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.